Coogs and the Cats meet up for another cat fight in Houston this time, but we're talking the gridiron between these two big-time hoop schools.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is a crossover edition of Locked On Coogs and Locked On Wildcats because with Leif Thulin, we're bringing Locked On Wildcats back into the fold. Now, I don't want to spoil what you got coming, Leif. Today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Mazda. Best way to get things moving forward is with a Mazda. We've got more on that fun later. We are going to talk hoops. Leif would not be on if we weren't talking hoops, right? Leif has other parts of the network, know him very well from the basketball standpoint. But today, Leif is representing the Arizona Wildcats as he's the host of the soon-to-be brought-back Locked On Wildcats. We're going to talk about the football game this Saturday in the first segment, the AP poll coming out later, and a potential I-10 rivalry happening between these two schools as well. I'm host of Locked On Coogs Park Ranger, joined by Leif. Leif, I generally open with these random food questions before I get into the nitty-gritty here. I assume you're not making it down to the third ward for this football game on Saturday, but if you were, would you be leaning towards finding more of a Tex-Mexy restaurant, experiencing Texas Mexican food, or finding some good old Texas barbecue?
Oh, barbecue all the way. I'm locked in on barbecue. I love barbecue, so that's an easy one.
You said locked. I think Locked On Barbecue is a channel a lot of people would be bidding for, frankly. Leif, the football game this Saturday, I think, takes front of mind for a lot of people, but the AP poll is also in the back there. So we're going to hit that in the second segment. This football season's been weird in the Big 12, as it always is. Arizona is 4-2. Houston is 5-1. Houston is slightly favored at home, just 1.5 point favorite at home. And I'm not sure that anyone nationally knows what to make of this game. I know I'll be picking the Cougs. You'll be picking the Cats. No big surprise there. When you see these two matchups at a macro 10,000 foot level, what are you seeing?
I mean, honestly, I think these are two teams that are mediocre football teams. Like, neither team is going to truly contend for a national championship. I'm not spoiling anything here, but I also don't think either of these teams are truly the lead contenders to win the Big 12 and make the college football playoff. And so I think you're seeing teams that are really fighting for the upper echelon of the Big 12 as opposed to the top tier. Whereas in basketball, I think you could really say that these two teams comprise the top tier. And I think that this is a game that can put someone into a championship game. Perhaps if the cards fall right, maybe a team that's ahead of them, like Arizona just lost to BYU. They have lost to Iowa State, two of the ranked teams, and they're 0-2 against ranked teams. Houston's played a fairly soft schedule and got dismantled by Texas Tech, who to me is the clear front runner and so far has not been really tested. I kind of think that this is a game that is, are you the middle of the road or are you slightly above the middle of the road, as opposed to either of these teams really stamping themselves as preeminent favorites to be the runner-up in the Big 12 or find a way to backdoor their way into winning the Big 12 football championship.
Well, and it would be fun for either of these teams, as you're mentioning, to kind of backdoor their way in. Houston would probably lose most tiebreakers on strength of schedule and that kind of stuff, but theoretically could finish the season with, as you mentioned, a soft schedule at 11-1. It would not surprise a lot of people if they won most of these games down the stretch here, and then would probably get to play Tech all over again in the Big 12 title game. We're being really honest, right? And now I think the second time would go better than the first time, and all that, but that's neither here nor there. Last week, Arizona played BYU in what had to be a heartbreaker. There was a weather weird deal in the latter part of that game. BYU was down big, but came back after that weather thing, like barnstorming with the freshman quarterback. Ultimately winning that game in double overtime, 33-27. Arizona now has to go from that to playing in Houston at 11 a.m. Central Time. I would point that out because it's 9 a.m. on the West Coast. That strikes me as really early to play a football game. I'm sure there's some way that the program can work that out on their own end. Do you see these external factors and variables playing a role for Noah Fafita and the Wildcats, or is that all stuff that you and I talk about on microphones and they don't care about as much?
I think the biggest thing in the mind of Arizona has to be we need to recover from a game that was probably one they should have won and really would have been a signature staple win for the program, because you led by 7 in the second half, 24-17 against BYU in Lavelle Edwards Stadium. That's not a easy place to play. And then you're up 3 late in the game, and they have, like you said, a freshman quarterback in Bachmeyer rally the troops and find a way to win. Credit to him. You lead in that game, and I think the real question is how quickly can the team emotionally recover from that, more so than the external factors of, oh, they're playing early in the morning. I think that they're close enough. It's not like they're traveling in the Pac-12 teams, like, Stanford goes to the ACC and all of a sudden they're at Florida State. Like that is a little more alarming if they were to play at 11 a.m. than this one, because it's so nearby. However, I do think it's an emotional task to really rally the troops and not lose back-to-back games entering a bye, because if you can win one of those games, obviously it would have to be Houston after losing against BYU. You set yourself up well to have a chance to backdoor your way into the contention. Obviously, there's a couple teams ahead because there are 2 losses against 2 ranked teams, but you have a chance, and that's all you can really ask for.
Well, it's interesting because, honestly, had they held on to the 2 touchdown lead against BYU, they'd probably be the Vegas favorite this weekend. They'd probably be the talk of the town right now, and they'd probably be looking to come into Houston and kind of keep things rolling. Brent Brennan, and I don't mean to like draw from his time at Oregon State or San Jose State or go too far into his background. Um, I feel like he's in year 2 of his own rebuild, just like Willie Fritz is at Houston. This is kind of I don't want to put it as a make or break game for them, but I do feel like if Houston were to come out like gangbusters and really blow the doors off or have a fun time, kind of waiting for those bunch of touchdowns, etc., that this could spiral. Colorado's getting better at this point than they were before. I want to talk about that more in a second as well. Kansas, Jalen Daniels is hard to beat. Cincinnati's ranked and looking better. Sawyer Robertson's a good quarterback. Arizona State rivalry. Like things could spiral in a weird way for Arizona. Am I crazy for thinking they almost feel like they got to get this one?
I don't mind that take at all. In fact, I really think that the emotional side of the BYU loss creates I don't want to say must win, because like I said, I don't believe that this is a team that can win the title. But like I said, you put yourself into contention to backdoor by winning this game and having crazy things happen. Crazy things have already happened within the Big 12 all throughout.
Always.
Like it's going to happen. There's going to be some cannibalism within, other than maybe Texas Tech looks infallible, but crazy things have happened. So I do think there's a world in which they lose this game at Houston, and all of a sudden they go into a bye week and it's make or break time, and it becomes a hot seat for Brennan type of narrative, because they lose a game they probably should have won, and then let's say they lose badly, like you said. I do think there's going to be some serious pressure, because this is a program that really felt like they were in the right trajectory. Jed Fish leaves, and all of a sudden they go to a mid-major school. Though Brennan had a lot of accolades, I remember I was at Big 12 Media Day. Wasn't at Arizona at the time, but I was covering at an ESPN radio, and we had talked to Brennan and Fafita and Tedero and McMillan, and they talk about the anticipation for a new coach and what they can do. They put up their numbers. McMillan went number 8 in the draft, but you look at what the team did, and it's not necessarily something to write home about. And right now, there is some optimism because Fafita's performed very well, but you end up having the whole season hinge on a few big games. And so far, the big games have not gone well. They lost a close one, and frankly, they got destroyed by Iowa State. And Iowa State hasn't been infallible either. So, you got to win some game where you're not necessarily the favorite. And right now, I've seen the spread as much as 1.5 point favorite for Arizona to 1.5 point favorite for Houston. And right now, it seems to be trending towards Houston. So, I do think this is a bigger game for Arizona than it is for Houston, if that makes sense, just because of the ramifications of the loss prior.
Well, and Houston, kind of on the inverse, has a softer landing spot after this one in terms of their schedule. Now, they do play Arizona State the next week. I think if Sam Levitt's back, that's a very good team. But West Virginia rebuilding, UCF, I guess might be good, but also kind of rebuilding. TCU you beat a year ago. Baylor's kind of up and down. Houston's just got a different back half here, and I feel pretty confident get that bowl eligible 6th win and a lot more in that run. You had to feel good about Kansas State when you beat them, but like you mentioned, they end up kind of not being good, but they won a couple lately. Houston beat Colorado and felt pretty good about it, but then Colorado's kind of skidded some. It's an interesting matchup and how alike these teams are. But when we're talking about how alike these two teams are, these are two rebuilding programs that are getting great recruiting fills and could really do a great job in the future of the Big 12 Conference. I think I'm confident Houston's going to be there. But these are also two really big basketball programs. And AP polls came out this week. I want to talk about what that means for these two programs and the Big 12 at large in just 1 second. But before we get to that, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Mazda, because Mazda Craft Cars, for those who do more than simply move. Now, Mazda leaders comps every ride. I tell you guys all the time, I'm a dad of a toddler. Those IIHS top safety pick awards that they've got more of than anyone else. That is important when you're driving a toddler around. And I'm very serious when I say I drive a Mazda. I actually can point that out this ad read. Now, all-wheel drive, the Japanese interior, all those kind of things are very special and fun. But the biggest thing is that they sweat every detail, just like Houston Cougar and Arizona Wildcat players, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's show is also brought to you by our buddies over at Peloton, because Peloton is shaping the future of fitness. Brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's the most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools to help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. Now, I used to be a big Peloton bike guy. It was the same thing every day. I kind of got off the wagon a little bit, getting back on the wagon with the Peloton Tread Plus. I get all kinds of different things every day, different programs, different workouts, working different parts of my body every single day. Let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward with the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. Parker Ainsworth joined by Leif Dulin here. Leif, these are fun football stories, rebuilding programs, bright futures ahead. In the present tense, these are two of the best basketball programs in America. AP polls came out on Monday. Houston came in number 2. I believe I had Arizona at 13th, if I remember correctly, on that AP poll. You've been covering basketball for a long time. You knew this Big 12 thing, and we're roping in, excited to have you. But you saw that AP poll. Arizona, Big 12 centric. What stuck out to you?
I mean, I think the Big 12 is going to be fantastic. Like, you look at the Big 12, Houston, obviously the torchbearer for the 2 years they've been in the conference. Kansas, of course, won 17 of 18 at one point prior, and that was kind of the afterthought. You had BYU it was in the top 10. You had Texas Tech in the top 10. Arizona just outside of it. Iowa State, who before getting hurt last year, you could make an argument was the truest contender with Houston. And then there's Kansas. Like that's 6 teams right there. Yeah, exactly. That's 6 teams right there that I think will be all within the top 4 seed lines. Maybe that's bold right now. I mean, we haven't played a game. The scrimmages even really haven't happened yet. But as a college basketball guy, that's what I love to watch. I do NBA scouting, and I'm so excited to be in this Big 12 space. I can't be more thrilled about where these teams are right now, and I only think they're going to be more well represented in the Big 12 than what this poll has, and that's kind of scary to think when my end of that sentence was, and then there's Kansas. So to answer your question, I'm excited about what Arizona is. I made my own poll prior to the AP poll, and I had Arizona a couple spots higher than they were in the poll, and I had Houston actually 2 spots lower to 4, falling precipitously. but I'm very high on each of these programs.
I want to get to the 2 specific in a second. They also had other receiving votes, as they always do in these things. And I may be crazy. I know they replaced their entire roster. I may have too much respect for Scott Drew. Mm-hmm. I can't believe Baylor only got 1 vote. And I'm not saying they're a top 10 or 15 team. I'm not saying that the preseason even matters all that much, Leif. I kind of thought they'd be closer to making it in the top 25 here. And they got a singular vote, as much as Oklahoma did, for what it's worth, and significantly less than Kansas State did, another Big 12 representative, right? And I guess it just had more faith in Coach Drew over there. Did anything else stick out to you as Big 12 crazy when you saw this?
I felt like Scott Drew and company probably deserve to be outside of the top 25, but not by much. So I understand they got received one vote. I would have assumed they'd receive more, but it didn't bother me that they weren't in it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised though if that's a 6 seed. Like if you do the math, like that puts them within the top 25. So
Right.
I do think that it's hard to pick a team that has zero returning anything to be there. But I mean, if you look at this team, like that's the team I had seventh. I did my standing projections, and I kind of think that's where it falls off for the Big 12. But I think you're going to have 6 teams within the top 4 seed lines, and then you're going to fall off. You're not going to have quite the depth that the SEC had of 14 teams making it last year. But I think 8 or 9 is possible, and you're going to have 6 or 7 of them within the top 5 seed lines. Like that's really hard to beat. I actually think the Big 12 is going to be the best conference in America this year and take that throne back from the SEC. I think it'll be close though.
Well, and speaking of close, we were a blown tech lead from having that half the Final Four a year ago, and then ultimately, I'll say it openly. I mean, Houston blew the last 65 seconds of a national title game from a Big 12 championship, right? I get how the SEC had the depth, and then ultimately did have half the Final Four and all those kinds of things. The Big 12 was so close a year ago, and I'm like you. I kind of think they're better. These two programs, currently both in the top 15, are only scheduled to meet once this season. I'd imagine they meet again in the Big 12 tournament, but right now it's just once. That's supposed to be in Houston. Now, that for Houston is in the middle of they play at Iowa State Monday, they host Arizona Saturday, at Kansas the following Monday. That is the week from, can we say hell on here? It's a week from hell. I don't know if we can say it on here or not. Leif, as you see this matchup between these two teams, again, both highly ranked in the AP poll right now, what do you see as, I mean, schedule aside, I guess, the key focus between these two groups here? Because the rosters are both freshman heavy, but also have some of those veterans.
Well, if we were speaking of just their matchup, and then I'll get to the grander scheme, but it'll be who wins the rebounding battle. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about that the week it happens because Arizona's enormous and Houston is known for just being an amazing rebounding team. But Juwan Roberts is gone. I mean, Chris Senac's fantastic, but like that's a difference. But to me, the difference between who wins the Big 12, and this will be beyond just these two teams. You can toss in Texas Tech, you can toss in BYU, Iowa State, Kansas, those top six to me will really boil down to whose young stars are truly the stars and whose supporting cast of like the years prior can develop into stars. And for Houston, the answer is like it's easy. Is Uzan going to be an All-American? Because Houston lost LJ Cryer and then their heartbeat, Juwan Roberts, right? Like I'm not telling your fans anything new, but I do think people are underestimating that when they have Houston at 2, that you lose a guy in Roberts whose stat line looks pedestrian, but he's the heartbeat of that team. And then you lose an All-American in Cryer, who's the most gifted scorer of that team. Uzan, to me, was a better player than Cryer last year, but you're asking him to shift his role and be more of a scorer. Sharp has to step up in his scouting report and score the basketball. And for Arizona, how good is Koa Pete compared to collegiate guys? He was dominant in high school, and he's going to be a physical mismatch, and they're going to get a million rebounds with Tobe Awaka and Mo Krivas coming back, and he was the guy who was hogging those touches, got hurt, and then all of a sudden they still had Henry Visar. Like that was a good problem to have. However, how good is Burry's going to be at the real deal level, and is Bradley going to take that leap similar to Uzan? So to me, these are the best two teams, along with Texas Tech. I think BYU's got a lot of talent, but they've got more things to figure out. Like the recipes are clear for these two teams, but really, whose supporting cast members take larger leaps is who's going to differentiate. I think eventually cut down the nets in the Big 12.
Well, I like that metaphor, that idea that the recipes are much more well known for these two teams. I like that a lot, actually, because I feel like, I don't mean to say you're wrong. Obviously, I'm going to argue the Houston side of this. Houston had the same questions to answer when Marcus Sasser left, and the same question to answer when Jamal Shed left, and the same, like, it feels like they find one. But I admit, like you're saying, I'm just kind of trusting that they find one. I think it might be Sharp picking up a few more points or shots per game and stuff like that. But I am assuming, like you're saying, they find one because they have in the past. Now, Sampson's done that enough times for me to assume that they'll do that again. That Cenac Pete matchup, though, you also do NBA draft stuff at Locked On. Again, it only happens in the regular season one time, and I'm sure draft guys like yourself are jealous that it doesn't happen more, like some of these other, just the way that schedule worked out. Freshman, power forward. Is that the best matchup in America right now between two potential top 10 picks?
I mean, that we guarantee happens. I mean, if Pete plays Boozer, or if you get, I will say AJ and Darren's going to be number one. So though we're homers here, I will go AJ and Darren
Do you think
is
they
number one.
cover each other? I guess my thing is,
Yeah,
Pete
I
and Cenac are going to cover each other too,
I,
right?
I agree. I think that does make a difference. I do. I'm curious because I think Koa is going to be the better collegiate player. I'll just make my prediction now. I think Koa is going to be the better collegiate player. I wouldn't be surprised if Cenac ends up going higher in the draft just due to the prototype of what is more desired in the NBA. He's longer. He's a little more raw. Koa's kind of been what he's been. He's been dominant. There's no issue there. He's been absolutely dominant at all levels. But what more is there to add? I feel like Senac's got more untapped potential, and there's a risk there. But that's my prediction. I think Koa is going to be the more decorated collegiate player. And I think Cenac may end up going higher in the NBA draft. So there's always that fold. And I really, one more thing about the grand scheme of like the Big 12 and who could win it. I really think that if you look at this team, this conference in terms of title contenders, there's a tier that is Houston absolutely deserves there, and they're first and foremost. I have them higher than Arizona, but I don't think it's by as much as some people do because, like, Kelvin deserves all of the credit in the world, and he gets the benefit of doubt. But he's never, and I know you bring up like they lose Sasser and Shed steps up, but Shed had played before that. They've never really gone from a true stalwart for year in and year out of Juwan Roberts being there to someone who wasn't there in Cenac. Because even when Jarris Walker came in, there were other guys that could still step in and play, and they lost a role that was less critical. Like he played a supplementary role, an ancillary piece, even though he's a lottery pick. Like Cenac is stepping in for the heartbeat. And as for Arizona, Koa Pete steps in, but they've had like interchangeable bodies up front. And the thing about Arizona is because Tommy Lloyd plays so fast, they play a lot of bodies. It's less dependent on him. Houston doesn't necessarily play with the same level of depth or pace. So they're a little more reliant on just the dependability. And that's why I'm a little lower on Houston. Granted, they're still number 4 in the country for me. Like
Oh.
it's not crazy. But I do think that there are closer teams in the Big 12 to Houston than there were the last 2 years. That's the way I'll put it.
Well, and I think that cultural background the two programs have actually ties a lot into what I do want to do in the third segment. I've been trying to build a Houston rival for a minute now, Leaf, and I think that there's a shot here that it could be Arizona. Before I get to the I-10 rivalry that is, I do want to remind folks that today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Wayfair. The holidays are going to be here before you know it, which is exciting, but getting your home ready for guests and celebrations can feel like a lot. Maybe you need new serveware or a guest room needs new bedding. Wayfair has everything you need to get your home holiday ready, from Christmas trees to wreaths to bedding, cookware, and outdoor inflatables. It's your one-stop shop for everything in your house. Now, Wayfair makes it easy to personalize your home for the holidays with a huge selection of for every style and budget, with free and easy delivery. Even on the big stuff, you can get everything you need without the hassle of huge delivery fees. Just get organized, refreshed, and stay ready for the holidays the way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's Wayfair, Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Today's show is also brought to you over at Supply House, because when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts at your doorstep tomorrow with over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times help keep you from punting on projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. You need parts for a project fast. Supply House has next-day delivery, which can be a real game changer. Join the free Trademaster program today and score various serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free. Use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Parker, Ainsworth, Leif, Tulane here. Now, Leif, I'm bringing you in as an Arizona guy, and I understand the appreciation for the Wildcats. Um, I think these two schools, athletic departments, programs, are weirdly kind of at a similar spot right now. They've got historic basketball programs. Houston goes back to Phi Slamma Jamma, Big E, right, et cetera. You've also got the more, I guess, like the 90s and early 2000s of the University of Arizona. And then the present tense, their basketball programs have real strong cultures. You mentioned the speed of Lloyd, Sampson, and his like grit or the physicality of the way they play. Football programs, rebuilding, reemerging. They each kind of pick their other sports. Houston's got a pretty strong volleyball program. The soccer program is good this year, surprisingly. Kind of out of nowhere in a lot of ways. Track and field, you got Carl Lewis and Olympians of galore, right? Baseball in Arizona is, something I don't have to tell anyone about. I think there's a rivalry to be built here, and admittedly, a lot of it hinges on this basketball rivalry. Do you think the I-10 rivalry has any sticking power because of those two cultural, like being so ingrained and fairly opposite?
Well, the other big thing that you didn't mention, but I think it goes without saying, is they came into the league at similar times, right? And you look at what you need in these, like Utah and BYU had a long-standing rivalry. Obviously, Arizona has Arizona State, but you look at what this team, in terms of basketball, these two teams and programs have. It's a belief that each year they should be an Elite Eight, a Final Four team. And Houston has been that more frequently than Arizona has, but Arizona's got a rich basketball history you alluded to. And I really do believe that these are the teams that are ascending and really allocating their funds to basketball more than football and other sports compared to the rest of the Big 12. Because you look at some of the other schools, they have programs that have more decorated pasts than do our two schools, right? And so I think that they are similarly funded. They have similar levels of history and lore, and right now they're top 15 teams in college basketball. And I would make the argument, if you were to go like program by program, you take the 10 years of Kelvin Sampson, which obviously is longer, and then Tommy Lloyd's, but you take their 10 years and you rank programs in terms of this is what they've done under these coaches, this is what their belief level is, their funding. They're both top 10 teams and maybe even higher. And so I really think you're looking at two teams that'll be top three seeds in March, and the two favorites, along, I think Texas Tech's got a chance as well to win the Big 12 title.
Well, and I jokingly call it the I-10 rivalry. I will say, while it is 1,067 miles between the two campuses, it only takes 6 turns. So that's a little bit silly that it's really that simple. As once you get on I-10, you just head west for a long, 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 long time. I think that the Lloyd Sampson aspect of this is fun. I also think it's interesting that like I feel like both. You mentioned winning, and Samson's chasing the elusive title, obviously. I think, frankly, both kind of need a title in the next 3, 4 years, weirdly. Am I crazy for thinking that? Am I jumping the gun on thinking that? There's like a validation that would, like, I think Samson's done enough to be a Hall of Famer. I don't mean that necessarily, but like, it's going to get talked. If he doesn't win one in the next 3 or 4 years, it's going to get talked about, rightly or wrongly. And I think that Arizona's kind of the same boat with Lloyd. Am I wrong?
Well, I think it's too soon for Lloyd, but I feel like Kelvin's turning into what Mark Few was for the 2010s. Like Mark Few, oh, well, Gonzaga's getting really good, and then Gonzaga's starting to now recruit more heavily. I think Houston is what Gonzaga was at the end of the 2010s and early 2020s, in the sense that before they got Jalen Suggs and Chet Holmgren, Gonzaga would develop their guys. They'd have Killian Tilly and Shemek Karnowski and Pangos and all those guys. And then all of a sudden, you get a few guys that are a little better. You get a Rui Hachimura, who's not a 4-year guy. And now you start going to the American guys. Whereas Houston, it's not recruiting Europe, which was Tommy Lloyd's specialty, to tie it all back together. But Houston's getting these guys who have been there for 5, 6 years. And now you can get a guy like Harwell. You can get a guy like Cenac. You had Jarris Walker. And because of the winning built the old fashioned gritty way and with longevity and keeping the team together, now you're starting to get the top guys, and it's one of the top brands in basketball, not just, oh, they win, like I respect him. I feel like that was kind of the thought on Houston for a long time while they were in the American. They've dominated the Big 12 since entering it. We're seconds away from winning the national championship, beat one of the best Duke teams in forever, which is, the preeminent program. And now Houston's the focal point of basketball. Like the people who don't have Purdue one always have Houston 2 right now. And that's just the tip of the cap. I don't think Lloyd's quite there yet in 5 years. This will be year 5, but I think he'll get there by years 6 through 10, maybe.
Well, and I guess admittedly, I in my head, he'd been at Gonzaga as an assistant for a lot longer. I don't guess I put together it was quite 50 years old. They've been there for a little bit longer than that. I and then I just pulled up his wiki to make sure I was like, oh yeah, no, that's right. I think that the interesting thing here too is that um they both recruit guys that can take what they're getting into, right? Like Sampson said in a presser on Tuesday, he's like, we only recruit a certain type of kid. And if at some point in the recruiting process, we think like, hey, we've invested a lot in this kid and the recruiting and whatever, and we don't think he's one of us anymore, they get out. And you mentioned the 5-star kids. They don't just go get every 5-star kid. They don't go after every 5-star kid because bluntly, not every 5-star kid can do what Houston's going to ask them to do when they show up. I have a lot of respect for what Lloyd does Arizona for doing, frankly, a very similar thing. Not everyone can play that pace with that kind of discipline that's required to play at Arizona, which kind of makes the amount of freshmen that got the big freshman class both schools got most recently kind of crazy, right, Leif?
I mean, they're perfectly aligned. If you look at the freshmen, I mean, Harwell and Burries and Cenac and Pete, that'll be awesome. And then, of course, you have the guys who are already there. So I do think this is the biggest basketball rivalry of the top schools. Like Houston and Kansas, of course, Houston's dethroned Kansas. There's something there, but it's not quite there. Arizona and Arizona State, it's a rivalry, and it for sure is, but Arizona State's not very good right now. I mean, you look at these teams, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Texas Tech and basketball, I think there can be a rivalry between you guys, but I don't think it's there yet. Like, I don't feel like they
They
both have kind of felt these like underdog stories coming up to the precipice. And now Texas Tech's got tons of oil money. And, maybe that's the other one, but I do feel like the timelines are similar for Arizona and Houston. So I'm on board with it generally.
Tech did get Houston last year. It's the only conference loss
Yep.
Houston had. It was at home. It was a little embarrassing, honestly, because
83-82. I remember the game. It was beautiful.
and for what it's worth, like Houston probably should have won because of the the toss of early in the game, and then coach got tossed as well, and all like probably should have. They also probably should have lost in the one score games they won. So I'm not saying they shouldn't have been 19 or 18 wins or whatever. But Tech fans will be in my comments right now saying it should be Tech. They got them last year. I totally understand. We'll see what that program looks like, the money infused over the next half decade and how long that lasts. They did just get a bigger commitment out of Dakari Spear, though, a 4-star I really like out of the Metroplex. Leif, you're doing a lot of things that are not just Locked On Wildcats. You are going to be the host when Locked On Wildcats comes back in the very, very near future. So talk to us about what all, like you're in a lot of places across the network, including Locked On College Basketball, which fans of Locked On Coogs probably know pretty well.
Yeah, so I over the last couple of years on Locked On, I have been on Locked On NBA Big Board. That's no longer going now. No Sealants is doing their thing and doing excellently. So I still do cover the draft, but I'm not doing that for Locked On anymore. But where I am all the time is with Isaac and Andy on Locked On College Basketball. And I hosted Locked On College Basketball game night last year. So on Saturday nights, if you wanted to recap, talked about Houston plenty of times and cover them. So I cover college basketball as a whole and adore it. So I'm very familiar with all the Big 12 teams as well as the rest of the country. And so I'm very eager to get going and specialize on a team in Arizona. I'm kind of thankful that I got a basketball heavy school in Arizona that I get to talk about some of the stuff I would talk about anyway, because I wrote out my rankings months ago because that's what I live for, college basketball. And so the AP poll came out at a good time. Got the gig. Looking forward to talking about the Cats. I'm sure I'll be talking about Houston plenty in various ways, but I'm eager to be on more of these squad shows, crossovers, and have Locked On Wildcats back.
The Cougars and Cats meet up this Saturday in football with a much anticipated game on this February. I guess it's early February, and basketball as well. All kinds of fun things for the Wildcats, the Houston Cougars get together. Thank you again, Leif, for coming on, breaking it down with us. Locked On Cougars, from the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Go Cougs.